What's going on, everyone? This is the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Travis Brown with MyAggieNation.com, the Eagle.com. Zach Taylor, normal co-host on this. He's off gallivanting around as he has been this spring. He's a married man now. He has other priorities. He'll be back, but welcoming in this week, Alex Miller of the Eagle. Alex, what's going on?
Not a lot, Travis. It's almost Friday afternoon. I am waiting in a waiting room to hopefully sign up for a COVID-19 vaccine. So here we go.
Look at you. We'll have Robert Cessna on with us later to break down everything, literally everything going on in Aggie sports. But let's start this off first with a little talk that I had with Aggie, pinch hitter extraordinaire, Hunter Coleman, on just what it's been like being the guy who comes into the season with the most active starts on the A&M baseball team, and then going to a season where he comes back and he's struggling for at-bats. So here's my conversation with Hunter Coleman. I mean, so you enter the season as the team leader in starts, coming back for the fifth year. And what was it like there for the first for the first couple weeks here, knowing that for a guy who's pretty much consistently had his name in the roster, it's a little hit or miss, and when you've been able to get playing time?
Yeah, definitely. It's a different role than I've been used to, and I think, if you would have asked me opening day if I would have put my own name in the lineup, I would have told you no. I struggled in the early spring when we were getting back in scrimmaging, and some of the adjustments I was making weren't really, I didn't feel comfortable with, and, I wouldn't have put myself in that opening day lineup for sure. And we've got some guys that are playing their tail off. Austin Post, I couldn't even tell you how many hits he got last week. Will Frizzell's definitely, having a hell of a year. So, I got guys in front of me that played my same position, that are positions, I guess, DH, first base, that are having amazing years. And, best I can do is come in whenever they need a day off and do my job. So.
Yeah, well, you mentioned kind of making some adjustments there in the spring that weren't at least initially taking. What were some of the things you were working on?
I would say mostly just kind of opening myself up a little bit. I've had an open stance really since my freshman year, and so kind of opening myself up and being able to drive the ball to the middle of the field, I think, is the biggest thing. When I've been struggling, I'm either a little too pull happy or trying to push the ball to the right field, and finally just told myself to open up and kind of go back to what I had when I played the best. I played the best my freshman year, so I think going back to that, and I guess it had been 3 years I've kind of had that move, so kind of getting back comfortable with it was the biggest thing. But I guess it's paying off.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to just jog my memory back a little bit, and at least, 3 of your home runs have been to center, left center a little bit? It seems like, have you felt like it's paid off?
Yeah, definitely. I think the little adjustment I'm making just with opening my stance up a little bit, I wouldn't say it's anything swing-wise, it's more setup. But, yeah, it's allowed me to drive them to all parts of the field. Instead of just, pull power, I can go center and right field now, and I've never kind of had that in my career consistently. So
yeah,
I think it's definitely a move that's been paying off.
Yeah, how much is there much of a mentality change in the way that you've approached the games this year, having coming off the bench? What are those innings like on the bench, and how have you been able to kind of adjust yourself mentally to pop into a game and then make an instant impact like you've been able to do?
Yeah, definitely. It's a completely different mindset, I would say. When you're in the starting lineup, you're going to get 3, 4, 5 at bats to help your team win. And when you're coming off the bench late in the game, it's usually for the most part, when you're coming off the bench for a reason, you need to, whether you're up big and you need to get yourself going, or it's a close game and you need to have a good at bat for your team. So I think just knowing that there's a lot more that rides on that one at bat, so you really need to be at your best, is something that I think all of our all of our guys that come off the bench do a really good job of. And it's something that, Coach Seeley and Coach Kai and Coach Pennington preach is, when you do get your chance, get ready. And I think our pinch hitters have been doing a great job of that this year. And hopefully we can continue that.
Yeah. When you are, I know coming back for a fifth year because of COVID is something that no one else has ever had to weigh or deal with. But when you're making that decision, is it in the back of your mind that, hey, I'm the leader in starts kind of returning for this team, but that isn't necessarily guaranteed. And was there any anxiety in that when you were kind of making that decision?
In the initial decision process, definitely not. I thought it wasn't about whether I could, whether I was going to be in the lineup every day or not. That's not really what that decision was about. I would say it was more, I felt like I had unfinished business here. I felt like, I still had some things left that I wanted to check off the list as far as playing here. And I guess when our season got canceled last season, I just kind of felt like if we had the opportunity, it would be no question if I was coming back. So I think, what was your second part of your question is just the possibility of not being in the lineup every day?
Yeah. How much did that just kind of, was that ever in the back of your mind when you were kind of weighing, that decision to come back or not?
Not necessarily. Yeah, like I said, not necessarily in the original decision, but throughout the fall, I didn't have the best fall that I've had since I've been back, and then in the spring, like I said, I was trying to make adjustments throughout the fall and the spring that I wasn't completely comfortable with, and I knew that there was a strong possibility I wouldn't get my name called opening day, and like I said, if they gave me the lineup card to write it out, I wouldn't have put myself in there. And as I said, the guys in front of me, they're having really good years, getting into a 3-hole education PAs. They're kind of carrying the load for us right now. So I guess I don't know what else we got on that.
Yeah. Well, and Coach said, you've done enough that you're going to get your name called more often now with the chances that you've had. What does that mean to you about what you've been able to do with those opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I'm excited for that. That's ultimately where I want to be. But, I want more than anything, in your fifth year of college, all you want to do is see your team win. So I'll play whatever role I need to play as long as we're winning. So, if that means I'm not in the lineup that day and don't get my name called late in the game or in a pinch hit situation and we win, that's awesome. It's really more for me about seeing our guys do good and seeing the guys that, you're day in, day out with all fall, all spring, seeing those guys have success and kind of mentoring young guys that we were talking about the other day as a team, how the new norm for young guys is completely different. So with, I guess with COVID and everything. So, what college baseball looks like after this COVID years, I think going to be completely different, and just kind of getting those guys on the same page as, my first 3 or 4 years here. Mm-hmm. How the season actually looks. This season's a totally different animal. I think, I don't know, there's just a lot you could unpack on that, but trying to leave a legacy of what Texas A&M baseball looks like in a typical year, I would say.
Yeah. Is there a point when the season actually got underway that you kind of felt like some of those changes were clicking, or was it just the production that you saw and the opportunities that you had in game situations?
I think, opening weekend during BP, I don't know what it was. It just felt like something clicked. Before the game, my preparation was getting a lot better. I'd still struggled with even, in the cage where not even just live at bats, even in the cage, the adjustments I was making just didn't feel right. But kind of talking to Coach Pennington, and telling myself, you've got one more chance at it. You can't keep making all these adjustments and keep trying to find a new swing all the time. At some point, you gotta say, this is what I got. Let's let it ride. And, luckily it started clicking at the right time, I guess. So.
Was there ever a moment that you were like, I'm just going to bang this and try to go back to what I had been doing? Did you ever give up on it or feel like you were about to give up on it?
I wouldn't say give up on it. I think, you're constantly, as a hitter, you constantly have to make adjustments. You're going to get left behind. Everybody, it's constantly about adapting, seeing the way other teams are pitching you. I mean, everybody has video scouting reports now, so they can figure out how to get you out with a click of a button. So you constantly have to adapt. So I wouldn't say I'm totally done making adjustments, but I guess the biggest thing is just kind of saying, you know what, this is what I got. It worked for me. Let's let it ride and see what happens.
I know that everyone, of course, wants to be in the starting lineups and wants to get as many at bats as they can in a game. But is there a special kind of adrenaline that comes with stepping up there as a pinch hitter and knocking in a home run or getting a big hit in that kind of situation that is just different than an individual at bat in a 4 at bat game or whatever?
Yeah, I definitely say so. There's a lot more riding on your on that at bat. You're probably gonna, as a pinch hitter, you're probably gonna get one at bat, and it's gonna be late, and it's gonna be important. So your day is gonna be 1 for 1 or 0 for 0. Or as far as productive at bat, or 0 for 1 as far as productive at bat. So I think just the mentality aspect of it going in, like knowing, having a plan and sticking to your plan for 1 at bat, and I think the biggest thing that Coach Seeley tries to instill in the guys that pinch hit, he kind of manages that part of the game is what matchup we're going to play or what hitter's going to go in a certain spot. And, the biggest thing he always says is just let it fly. You get one shot at it. If you're going to come back to the dugout, don't come back with a regret like, damn, I should have done that or I should have done this. Go out there, get your 3 best swings off and live with the result.
Yeah. You got into it a little bit, and I know there's like you said, there's plenty to unpack here. But how has this season been different from the 4 before? Whether it be directly COVID related or having to do with having all of these players and all these veteran players, how has it just been different in either a good way or a bad way?
Yeah. Aside from the testing procedures and the COVID protocols and things like that, I would say it's more of a team dynamic element. Just feels like it's missing, with all the quarantine and things of that nature. You didn't get to spend very much time off the field with your teammates, which is arguably probably the most impactful thing for a college baseball team is, getting to know your teammates, knowing them off the field, so that when you are on the field, you can kind of have that relationship where exactly what that guy's thinking or how he's going to go about his business. And, for a long time, it was just seeing each other in the locker room and at the field for practice, and then everybody goes home and has to stay in their house. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of new guys missed out on that kind of aspect. And then I think another thing that's honestly probably good for college baseball as a whole, is, every team we play, whether it's on a weekend or on a Tuesday or a Wednesday game, everybody's got some talented players. Just because the draft got limited and, grad transfers were a big thing with guys with their last year. So every team we play is a good test for us. So I think, you look across college baseball as a whole, there's been a lot of upsets that, on a typical year you probably wouldn't see coming.
Yeah.
But, that's how college baseball is. And part of me wants that to see that stay. I think it's more competitive. You got to bring your A game each and every day. There's no midweek games that you can kind of take for granted, just because you're going to get their best guys lining up against you. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. 2 more for you. In the years I've covered y'all, I kind of think back about maybe some of the teams that y'all have that just weren't necessarily good offensive or good hitting teams. Kind of what 2 seasons ago kind of stands out, where sometimes y'all just went a couple of games where it seems like y'all couldn't buy a hit or really weren't barreling stuff up well. This is a team that y'all have had some ups and downs offensively, but it never seems like y'all are just begging for a hit because y'all are barreling stuff up. Do you feel like this is one of the better offensive teams that y'all have had, and it's just a matter of putting that together, maybe different from like that 2019 season?
Yeah, I can't remember which year it is, but I know what you're talking about. It just seemed you knew in that year that you're referring to, it seemed like you knew showing up to the field that our pitcher was going to give up 3 runs or less every game, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so, if we put 2 or 3 or 4 up on the board, we got a good shot at winning. That was great, but at some point you can't depend on that, and you got to get your offense rolling. I would definitely agree with you. This offensive team is, like you're saying, when we are making outs, for the most part, they're loud outs and they're good at bats. I think last night's a great case in point. We got, I think, 2 hits, one in the first, one in the ninth, but I'd say for the first 5 innings for sure, and even later into the game, hard ground balls, hard line drives, and just seem to be right at people. And I think a good thing we did well is not try to deviate from that just because they're not following. We're trying to do something different or something out of ourselves. It just wasn't our night last night. Our pitchers did a great job. I was encouraging to see. But I'd say I definitely agree with you that this team has the capability of being an elite offense. And I never show up to the field thinking, I hope we show up on offense today. Kind of have that expectation.
Mm-hmm. And then to close it out, kind of combining with something you said earlier, my question would be for what has been a crazy year for you, and looking like it's going to be trending upward some more here. What is a successful season for you personally? And we can kind of combine that with, you said you came back because you still had some things to check off in your college career. What are some of those, and how do those tie in with what a personal successful season would look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, coming into freshman year, didn't really know what to expect. We had a good team, and got hot at the right time. We made it to Omaha, and then since then it just kind of seems like we're not really getting to our standards of what Aggie baseball looks like as a team and within our locker room. It just seems like we're just ended up a little bit short every year. And I think the biggest reason I came back is just to kind of experience that one more time, experience what, walking away from the season, being like, yeah, that team was a good team. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life, that kind of aspect. And I think what was a big reason of that is, last year's team, I thought, we started off really good. I think, that team just definitely had something going for us, clicking everything, pitching, everything like that. I felt like it was going to be a good year. And then, to get that year taken away and I guess to walk away from the game after getting your year taken away when you have the opportunity to come back, I just couldn't see myself doing that. I just think seeing our team, hold up a regional trophy, hold up a super regional trophy one more time is the biggest reason, that anybody comes back for their 5th year.
Thank you so much for Hunter Coleman for allowing us to use a few of his good quotes and conversation on the podcast. You can catch that story I wrote about him on theeagle.com right now. We'll be back after this with a conversation with Alex and Robert Cessna about everything going on in A&M sports. Welcome back to the My Aggie Nation podcast. We got an all-Eagle crew here this week. Alex Miller's over there, and we're also joined by Robert Cessna of the Eagle because, he covers women's basketball, and women's basketball is all anybody wants to talk about here in Aggieland. Cease, how's it going, and how are those drives back and forth to San Antonio?
Well, luckily I haven't seen a lot of cops, so that's always good the way I drive, that. So, and if A&M goes well, I'll have a couple more trips, and hopefully I'll avoid seeing the Smokies.
There you go. Hey, so Jordan Nixon, has just absolutely kind of captured the amazement of the A&M fan base here in the last couple of weeks. And what has it? What has her story been this year, and covering her leading up to what everyone saw this week in her game-winning shot?
Well, I'm always amazed. Go back to the start. Always, you look right now, it's like she's an All-American. But let's go back to the start of the year. Gary didn't even want to name her as a starting point guard. When you stop and remember, it was 3 or 4 people competing for that job. You had Nixon, you had Mackenzie Green, you had Alexis Morris, who they didn't know was going to be eligible right away, but then she was. So, and Gary went in and didn't say that she would be the starter. Now, she did start from the get-go. Now, whether that was a little coaching ploy that he wanted to get the most out of her, but you go back to the start, that was the only position where they really didn't have anybody penciled in for sure, because the other 4 were seniors. And then you can honestly say, as the season went on, Nixon fit in there nice, but no one saw this come. She went into the tournament averaging 9.5 points per game. Her best game was 19 points. And when you start looking how post-oriented Gary always is, when you have Jones in there and Johnson that are both going to play professionally, probably not in the WNBA when it's all said and done, but go overseas. Then you had Streaky Wells. You had Wilson, who he has touted all along as the person he probably wants to step up and take shots. So you had all these options. And right now, LeBron James, everybody in the world knows that A&M's point guard is Jordan Nixon. But go back to the start. If Gary says he saw that coming, his nose is a little bit longer right now. Because when you go back and look at the quotes early in the year, he didn't even know who was going to win that job.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comparisons on social media between Jordan Nixon and AC Law. Alex, what do you think? And Cease, what do you think? Is this a good comparison?
I think the comparison would be Jordan Nixon to Kennedy Carter. I mean, and you think about the games that Kennedy Carter had in the NCAA tournament. I mean, she just took over. You think about when they played DePaul her freshman year, and then it was Marquette her sophomore year when she actually dished the ball to Shimbria Washington for that 3-point shot. And, they lose to Notre Dame a couple of times, but Kennedy posts over 30 points. That's the comparison I would make. I see the comparison with AC, though, just kind of that X factor, that clutch player in crunch time. That's the person you're going to get your ball to. But, yeah, what do you think, Cease?
Well, I always have to laugh. We live in the era of social media. So if I'm able to make a good joke, I could have the best joke in the world here in the next 15 minutes through social media. We want to go to the nth degree right off the bat. And, Alex touched on it. It wasn't that long ago that A&M wiped out a 17-point deficit to beat the ball. And they mobbed Kennedy Carter, and she was going to be the next best thing since a new Mexican food restaurant opens in Bryan College Station. Let's look at things and let's hold it, a little bit, put the bridle on it, put the reins on it. But I will say this, we're not around her enough this year because of COVID, but she seems so level-headed. She took over both games without being a gunner. You think about how many people could have hit big shots against Iowa State, but didn't. Wilson took 17 shots. And she was pretty bad. It's not like Nixon hogged the ball. She hogged the ball as the game went on because she had to. She was the only one making shots. The fact that she's a sophomore and the team will be built around her next year coming back, the future's unlimited. Let's give her her due. She was recruited by Notre Dame when Notre Dame was winning the national championship. I mean, they had high expectations for her. So she is not chopped liver. She's a little bit more like the Brazilian steakhouse instead of just another Mexican food restaurant. So let's see what she can do. But this is a great building block. This shows that the cupboard won't be bare after those 4 seniors walk out. Because I never thought, I said, man, 3 months ago, I'm saying, like 2 months ago even, I'm saying, man, Gary's going to have a big rebuilding job. Yeah, Zay Green's nice. She's back. Morris is back. But there's going to be a lot of holes. But if she continues to play like that or even get better, when you have a point guard, you've got something, and you guys touched on about AC Law. That's a great comparison because if you have a good point guard, you'll be in almost every game.
Yeah, yeah. So, A&M fans, I would argue even the A&M team thought that heading into the selection Monday that they were going to be or had a good shot at a number 1 seed, and they fell to number 2. But now here's 2 games where it went down to the wire in the first 2 rounds of the game. And in the second game, A&M needed overtime. What has happened so far, Cease, in this tournament that has made what A&M thought would be maybe an easier walk than in the years past into the Sweet 16, a lot more difficult?
Well, it's interesting, as I had really time, and I want to write this column, but I'll touch on it now. I think Gary Blair's, mantra and just the way he is, they love the underdog role. And you think throughout all his career at SFA, Arkansas, he is amazing at teaching underdogs and, that kind of mentality, even a 2011 team. You think about this year, how good this team played to get to the point where they beat South Carolina for the SEC regular season title. I'm thinking all along, this is a team that could win the national championship. And then right after they walked off the court for beating South Carolina, they are a shaky 3-1. They beat LSU looking not that bad. And then they just totally, was outplayed by Georgia. Even though it was a close game, I didn't get the feel that A&M really played hard that game. And so I said, okay, you win the regular season title, you have a little bit of letdown. But then they also struggled now the last 2 games. And what happens when you struggle? I don't want to say it's all on A&M because a lot of times it's matchups. And you guys know basketball a lot well. Sometimes it's matchups. And I think both those teams were bad matchups. And when you have a bad matchup, you can't play with a lot of confidence. So suddenly you look like you're lost. You're not playing well. Iowa State, man, the way they hit A&M won, even though Iowa State hit 16 of 33s. That's amazing. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of teams who wouldn't want to play that Troy team the way that they played because those couple of those girls could hit fadeaway jumpers just about better than any men's team you've seen, and that no one knew because they just didn't play. But to answer your question is, I think A&M's waiting to get to the point where they're the underdog. And if they win this next game, then they'll be the underdog against North Carolina State. And I look for them to play better against Arizona because I think hopefully it'll be a better matchup from them. But I give you a Gary Blair answer, my long-winded as I ramble. I just think they played a little tentative matchups or whatever, but I think there was some sense of accomplishment after beating South Carolina to win the regular season title. But I do think this team definitely needs to play better if they want to make the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. 16 threes will knock off just about any team on almost any day. And that was impressive by Iowa State. Well, you touched on Arizona a little bit. Let's we'll probably talk about it again down the line, but it's always worth pontificating on. What is the ceiling for this A&M team? Do you think? Do you think a Final Four run, a national championship game, a national final run is in the tank? Where's your barometer right now, 2 games in?
Well, I have to laugh because I saw Charlie Cream. He went ahead and reseeded the 16 teams left. I think let's not forget one thing else. The SEC was not as good as we all thought. 6 seeds going in to the tournament, and you're thinking like, wow, Tennessee, Arkansas, man, Georgia, A&M, man, the SEC is so good. 2 teams are left, South Carolina, A&M, and if one shot goes the other way, only one SEC team would make the final 16. And it's a little bit like the Big East or the American Athletic Conference, wherever UConn is, it was them and everybody else. Bottom line is SEC was not that good. Their middle teams got beat pretty bad when you consider Arkansas loses, to Wright State, and then Wright State gets killed the next game out by Southwest. So the ceiling, man, if A&M lost to Arizona, it wouldn't surprise me. If A&M plays for the national championship, it wouldn't surprise me because A&M does have all the ingredients, but they just haven't put it quite together yet. And I think a lot of that is because Wilson hasn't played. Wilson's played really 2 bad games. It's almost like she's forcing it. And she is, to me, their best all-around player. They need more out of her. They need, Jones and Johnson are missing bunnies all the time. I mean, they're still shooting a combined, I looked at about 50%, but they should be shooting about 75%. They're going up against shorter girls, and they're missing 2-foot and 3-foot bank shots, and you just can't do that. So, and I know it's frustrating to Gary because they should be playing better. And, it's nice to be complaining, I guess, about a Sweet 16 team you're covering about how bad they are. I think we'd all love to be talking about how bad Buzz's team would be right now if they were still playing. So once again, it doesn't take fans or media long to be so callous to say, oh man, they're playing horrible. They're shooting 40%. They're turning the ball over. But yeah, Travis, bottom line is if I'm speeding back trying to get a ticket, after the Arizona game, because they're out of it, wouldn't surprise me if I got to go back. And, right now I'd say Maryland might be, if you pick one team that really looks good and no one wants to play. And of course, A&M wouldn't have to worry about Maryland until they get to the finals. But I like this bracket. Arizona, win that, you probably play NC State. And even if you win that, you play Connecticut. And I even like that matchup. So the bracket is set up for a lot more Gary Blair FaceTime nationally.
Yeah, and going back a little bit to Gary Blair's team and strategies, I mean, his teams always are good when when they have the ability to work the ball into the post and when the post is making shots.
You got to give them a lot of credit because once again, you can nitpick, but I thought they probably going to lose both games, and they found a way to win it. So that goes a lot of coaching, a lot of players not giving up. And, that the way they came back and won that Iowa State game, and Iowa State looked a little rattled finally in the 4th quarter. It'd have been so easy for A&M to just give that game up and say, well, heck, doesn't matter. We're guarding these girls hard for 25 seconds, and they're hitting threes all the time. Remember, they're 16 out of 30. They probably rebounded half their misses. So, I mean, on those threes, it was the fact that they won that game. Iowa State could have played just about anybody in the nation the other night, and they'd have won.
Let's shift. Well, A&M women's basketball hits the court again Saturday night. Cecil will be out there. Be sure to follow Aggie Sports and check theeagle.com and pick up the paper to see all the recaps and the previews for that. Let's shift gears. On Monday, A&M football starts spring practice. We talked to Jimbo Fisher yesterday. Let's just start out simple. What is the one thing that you two are looking for most, or looking forward to most, or the top storyline for you two heading into spring football? Cease, go first.
I just want to wait to see that offensive line. I'm getting back to it. I stuck to that last year, and I think that was a good thing to stick to. And I said, if the offensive line is good, Kellen Mond will be good. I'm saying this year coming up, if the offensive line is good, the quarterback will be good.
Yeah, I'm right there with Cease. I'm really curious to see what this offensive line shapes up looking like. We know there's one piece for sure, and it's Kenyon Green, but we have no idea where he's going to line up. Jimbo said he can line up everywhere, even center. So, the best guess is he's either going to stick at left guard or slide out to left tackle. But beyond that, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen. The only other guy we've really seen that's coming back is Layden Robinson. He played a little bit of guard last year against South Carolina. He actually played really well in that game too. But, A&M, it's almost a clean slate. They've got the transfer from Tennessee, Jameer Johnson. They've got that JUCO player, Jordan Moko, that they signed. And Bryce Foster, he's a highly touted 5-star recruit that was kind of the big prize right before that early signing period, but he's not going to be here till the summer. And so even if we get a glimpse of what this offensive line looks like here in the spring, I'm just not sure that we're going to really know what it looks like until fall camp, or honestly, maybe even a couple of games into the fall. So see, so we got a guest appearance at the Cessna household.
Chester's a little quiet. What does Travis think? If you and I agree with that's kind of dangerous. Does Travis agree with us?
Well, I think the easiest thing
that would be really bad.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, yes, I am curious to see what the offensive line looks like, but I had another answer. I'll go with that.
Wow.
I think the easy one to go with, of course, is any year with a quarterback battle kind of makes our lives a little bit easier because there's lots to write about. It's been a couple of years since we've had a real true quarterback battle in the fall, and to see who comes out of that. I mean, there's what it appears to be three really good options. I think that Hayes King's probably going to be the leader in the clubhouse, but Zach Calzada, by every indication, has been making some moves, and Eli Sowers is impressed coming in. So quarterback battle always has me a little bit excited because there's lots to follow there. But if you want to talk about something that popped up since we talked to Jimbo Fisher yesterday, I'm excited to see what Baylor Cup can show at the tight end position, because as Jimbo Fisher said yesterday, Jalen Weidermeyer is going to be out of spring ball because of a freak accident cut to his finger that required surgery. And Blake Smith is going to be out because he kind of retweaked that knee that he hurt last year. And so it's going to be Baylor Cup's time to shine. He's been here 3 seasons, the past 2 during fall camp. He's hurt himself and hasn't been able to play. And the interesting thing, and I'm sure people do remember this, but coming into A&M 2 years ago, he was the guy. He was going to be the front runner and the guy to take over for Jay Sternberger before he got hurt. And then it was Jalen Weidermeyer's job, and he's embraced that fully to the point where now everyone might be a little nervous that Jalen Weidermeyer is hurt and they're left with Baylor Cup. So I think it's going to be an interesting spring ball for Baylor Cup to see how he can take any hold on that tight end position, one that Jimbo Fisher has proven that he utilizes a lot.
Funny you should mention that, because I was on the NCAA women's basketball call yesterday, so I'm watching you guys' tweet. As soon as the Weidermeyer, the first thing I thought about, Baylor Cup. What's he like? I mean, because everybody was saying that, so I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So there's still a lot going on in Aggieland. I know I wrote 3 stories about 3 different sports yesterday. Cease, you're doing that every day. There's a lot going on. Let's quickly touch on I'll just covered volleyball last night. They lost both games to Florida. The SEC announced that they're not going to make up any more of those postponed series. So unless A&M makes the NCAA tournament, their season is done. They came out in the latest RPI as ranked 193. So I don't see that as happening. Soccer's going on right now. They're gearing up through that. So that is we'll definitely talk and have a little bit more soccer coming in the future, but that leaves softball and baseball. Let's end this podcast with a little baseball talk. Cease, you're the softball guru. I know you've split time between softball and women's basketball. Let's just have a brief synopsis of where softball is right now in their season and what you've seen from them.
I think it's going to be a great season to watch because they're going to be much improved. They have pitching, and in softball, you have pitching. You've got a chance. They've got a lot of young hitters. Really love Mackenzie Herzog, a leader. She's great in the circle, 8-1. The A&M softball team will be much improved. Now, is it going to be a league title? No. But is it going to be closer to 12-12, breaking even? Yes. And I think that's great improvement when the last time they had a full season, they were 6-18. So the wind is blowing out at Davis Diamond this year, not in. Things are better out there.
And they have South Carolina this weekend.
South Carolina, a team that they should win. This is a series they got to win. They got 8 of them. South Carolina was picked 3 spots above them. They lost all 3 to Arkansas. You're at home. This is a weekend that A&M needs to win at least 2 out of 3.
Well, we'll put a pin in softball right now until women's basketball gets over, and we can definitely break that down a little bit in the future. But baseball is having a little bit of an interesting one this year. I don't think I quite know what they are, and I don't know if they quite know what they are yet, coming off of the COVID-shortened season last year. I think there is certainly a lot of frustrations from how last season ended and the ability and the talent that they had that left for the MLB draft last year. it's a year that you can say, well, the pitching is not quite there. And then they come back and strike out, 15, 16, 13 batters in a weekend. And then they go into SEC play and put up some runs against Florida, but can't necessarily win a game against them. So they start 0-3, and then they lose a game to Rice. But it's a very roller coaster season. And I know y'all have, I've probably watched a little bit more than y'all covering the things, but Cease, you covered some games. Alex, you keep touch. Here's my question. I go back and forth on if this is a good offensive team or not. And the inclination that I have first is to say, yeah, it's not necessarily great. They're not producing runs like they should. But if you want to compare and contrast, I would go back to the 2019 season, the one that ended with the it was Braden Shoemake's last season. It ended with the Morgantown Regional in West Virginia. And you go back and think about that streak that they had through the end of that season, into the SEC tournament, and then into that regional, where they just absolutely could not buy a hit. And not only could they not buy a hit, they weren't putting barrels on any balls. And as Cease, I know you're a baseball guy, as a baseball guy, you don't necessarily look at if balls are falling in or home runs for the overall health of a offense. You look at barreled balls. And this is a team that can barrel up the ball. They can get hits when they need to get them at times. And they put up 4 runs against Florida, number 5, Florida's Friday night starter, which in a Friday night SEC game, 4 runs should be enough to win a ball game. This is an above average offense. I think it's an above average pitching staff when they're not walking and hitting batters. They just can't seem to put all the phases of their game together in one good game to win an important game.
Travis, I love your statement, above average, because that's what I think this team is. I've covered 2 games and listened a little bit at radio, followed all your stories, whatever. I think that this is about a 15-15 team. And the problem is they're a little above average, but you're in the SEC. You have to be better than a little above average if you want to be good. And I saw 2 average pitchers the other night dominate their lineup. And that's not good when you're going to face a Friday night guy in the SEC that's really good every week. So can they go 17-13, which would be great? Yeah, they could. Could they go 13-17? Yeah, I think that's where I'm putting them at in between here. And I don't know which way they're going to go, because they have the pitching that can really be good, but then they also struggle at times. Childress was horrible against Florida after being so good for 2 or 3. So, it's a little bit like the softball team. I feel there's a lot of hope out there, but, starting 0-3, man, that puts you behind the 8 ball right off the bat, and you're going to win here. But, the bottom line is we're seeing baseball and softball. I'm looking at the plus side this year, and I'm hoping they get closer to that 17-13, and there's a regional and super regional. So, forever the optimist as a sports writer even.
Alex?
Yeah, this is a big 4-game stretch for the Aggies. This is a series that I think that's winnable against Georgia. Georgia lost 2 or 3 to Tennessee last week. And then, you play a Tuesday game against Texas, and Texas is by far the better team. But we know that when rivalry game is on, anything can happen. And it's at home. That's a game A&M wants to win. And I think, if A&M could get a series win against Georgia, that really boosts your confidence going into a big game Tuesday. And man, what a win over Texas would do for the Aggies. And, if they lose that game, that's a game they expect to lose, but A&M's got to get back on that upswing if they want to get back to that 15-15, what we're talking about after getting swept by Florida weekend 1 in the SEC.
If you really want to look at the overall health of this A&M team, it goes back to exactly what Rob Childress preaches in his press conference. And that is, are his pitchers walking and hitting batters? Are they allowing free bases? Because it's an offense, like we said, that's a little bit above average. They're going to be able to put enough runs to win some games. But if the pitching staff is walking a lot of batters, giving a lot of free passes, they're not going to probably have the offense to overcome that kind of deficit. And so that I think pitching struggles are going to be the difference between those two margins, Cease, that you mentioned earlier. I think that, when we talk about above average, I think that A&M is a little bit above average. I look across the country and see what some of these other prominent baseball schools are doing this season. I think if A&M was in any of their, just about any other conference right now, they'd be a front runner in the conference. But the SEC is just that stacked this year, like you said. I mean, if you look at the D1 baseball, I think the top 7 schools are all SEC schools. It's just a kind of an unreal baseball season for the SEC. And it does go back to the fact that the one thing that everyone I've talked to continues to talk about this season is the fact that with seniors, fifth-year seniors getting to return, teams are just more stacked than usual. And that doesn't even necessarily include the SEC. Actually, what has impressed more people through this is that you go to and play one of these mid-major non-conference or midweek games, and they have pitchers who are coming in the late innings who are throwing mid to low 90s. And you just don't see that from the mid-majors, having that kind of depth arms. So when you look at maybe some of the struggles that A&M have had in some of those mid-major games, and you look across the country at sometimes these teams that are getting upset in midweek games for several top 25 teams, it's just because the depth of talent that is in college baseball this season is probably unrivaled to just about any season because of the amount of players they're able to have and how small the MLG draft was last year.
You're right. A&M just needs to listen to their good bullpen catcher they have covering them, so they'll be okay. And, listen to his signals.
There you go. Well, that's all the time we have. We'll enjoy this little roundtable. We'll probably be bringing it back this fall on the My Aggie Nation podcast. So for Alex Miller and Robert Cessna, I'm Travis Brown. This is the My Aggie Nation podcast. We'll see you next week.
It seems like every day, everything just has a way to burst at the seams. But if we don't watch what we're doing, our hearts will get ruined by silly things. Good love ain't easy, girl, we know that's true. And if we wanna keep it, we gotta watch everything that we do, yeah. Don't wanna make sure, my baby, make sure you're sticking with me. Don't wanna make sure that we'll be all that we can be, all that we can be, all that we can